Third stage, connecting rods and pistons. When the crankshaft is installed, the next thing you have to do is to install the connecting rods and the pistons. The first we do here is to take away the rod cap from the rod and install the safer shoes on the rod bolts. The next thing we have to do is to install the piston on the connecting rod. The piston pin, which holds the piston on the connecting rod, is a floating. So when you install the piston pin, lubricate it with assembly lube, and the rod eye and the piston eyes too. After installing the pin and the piston pin security rings, we can measure the piston rings in the block. For that, lay the first piston ring into the cylinder bore and press it with the piston in straight position. Now you can measure the end gap clearance of the piston ring. When it's in the tolerance, you can install the piston ring directly. If not, you have to clear it by filing the end cap on the right clearance. When all piston rings are installed on the piston, lubricate them with engine oil and clean the cylinder bore again. That's the last opportunity before installing, and afterwards lubricate it with a light film of engine oil. Now you can install the piston ring compression on the piston and press the piston into the cylinder block by using a hammer handle, but only use plastic, not metal or wood. Now you can turn the block into a position where you can work easily to the connecting rod, and now you can install the connecting rod cap. And afterwards you can torque the bolts to specification. At this point I have to say that the bearing clearances has to be adjusted like the bearings from the crankshaft. Do this for all 8 connecting rods. Fourth stage, oil pump, pan, etc. Before I can install the oil pump into the block, it has to be sure that the gasket surfaces are clean. And we have to install the drive shaft first, then we can install the oil pump. Afterwards we install the oil pickup and fasten the screws. Now we turn the block back on the horizontal direction to install the timing chain. Make sure that the first cylinder is on TDC and the camshaft is in right direction to the crankshaft. It means that when the first cylinder is on TDC, that both valves of the first cylinder are closed. Afterwards we turn the block on the back side again to install the oil pan. To help the original gaskets to seal, we use RTV's silicone again. Part B, the long block final assembly. First stage, hydraulic lifters. Before you can install the hydraulic lifters into the lifter bores, we have to make sure that the bores are clean. Afterwards we turn the block in this position that the lifter bores are in vertical direction. Then the hydraulic lifters themselves has to be lubricated. Now we can install it into the block. Do this for all 8. Second stage, cylinder head. Before you install the cylinder head, we clean the cylinders, the bores and the gasket surfaces again. When it's done, we can lay on the gasket onto the block. And position the cylinder head. Do it very careful not to damage one of the parts. To fasten the cylinder heads on the block, we use new RP cylinder head bolts. So lubricate the threads with assembly lube and hand tighten them into the block Afterwards, torque them to specification. Do the same for the other side. After that, clean the windage again and then lay in the windage tray. Third stage, intake manifold. The cleaning of the gasket surfaces is always important. For installing the intake manifold, it's very important. To suggest the right sealing, we have the original gaskets with RTV silicone again. It could be that the lower gaskets don't fit. We'll fit them with a cutter or anything else. It's not a bad idea to position the distributor. So afterwards, install all screws. And fasten them. Now you can escape the distributor from the engine again. Now it's time to install the push rods. For that, lubricate the lower and the upper bolts with engine oil and lay them into the block. Make sure that the lower bolts go into the hydraulic lifters. When all push rods are installed, you can finish the valve train by installing the rocker shaft assemblies. Fasten the screws very careful not to bend the rocker shaft. Do this for both sides.